We went to Italy last May, and the last day of second last day we stopped at Peyote. And one of your comments was, "These are real gunsmiths."
Yeah.
You know, and what I pay attention to things that are said all the time because I'm always in the showrooms. I'm always paying attention, and I hear everything. I was in awe because it was pretty cool to see. I mean, there was a 21-year-old making a barrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, me at 21, I can barely use a knife right.
Well, you know, the Italian gun trade, you know, they're struggling globally from the sense that, you know, in the 21st century, we've lost a lot of the familial sense of the trades. And I think the Italian trades are still hanging on by a thread. You know, they still have some young people that really they just want to start. They want to go out of their school and they want to go right straight into a trade, and they want to work with these people and build these fine things. I mean, that used to be the way everything was done.
Well,
you know, and it's not the same. I mean, just with the, you know, with the global travel and the internet and everything, people are wanting to broaden their horizons and do some different things. I mean, there were guys, I knew guys over there in Italy, okay, not only had they never been out of Italy, they'd never been out of the valley. You know, Gardona Valtrompia, that whole region there, you know. Yeah, maybe they'd been up to Maneva. Well, that's at the top of the valley. You know, they'd been down to Brescia. That's at the bottom of the valley. You know, but they everything that they had, you know, they were
that's
satisfied.
who they were.
That's who they were. You know?
I'm Pedro, I'm a gunsmith.
I'm a gunsmith. That's what I do, you know.
Yeah.
And my father was a gunsmith, you know, and his father before that, Paulo Zoli. You know how I love Paulo's a dear friend. Paulo's awesome. You know, Paulo's father and grandfather were both gun makers. You know, it is in his blood. Paulo Zoli is the only businessman that I've ever known that I watched that man spend his money on manufacturing technology or measuring systems quality control to make a part better, knowing that the part is not going to cost him less money to produce and he can't make it faster. He's only doing it to make it better.
That was the one thing. Everybody that watches the channel knows me. I'm Parati through and through. I just love everything about it.
It's not a bad pick. It's not a bad pick.
It's like saying I'm Rolls Royce through and through. I was like, well, but it's my favorite by far company is Zoli. And I did a video on this, you know, why Zoli is the name of the video. It's just Paulo. Yeah. The name of the video should be why Paulo. It's just, you know, I tell people, when I talk on the phone with people, he's always at Nationals. You want to meet one person, go talk to that man. That man, when you would say, I want to meet an owner or I want to get a tour, he's the type of person that you want to leave the tour because there's no more information you can attain, so much information that he knows. Now, I didn't get, you know, Beretta is not an owner company anymore. It's a gigantic corporation, right? And Mauro Perazzi is still there. We met Peyote, we met with Rizzini. But I have a feeling that Paulo Zoli is just, he knows every screw, every spring, every bead, the width of the rib, the checkering pattern, the wood, where it came from, everywhere it's made, every aspect of the gun. And even though I'm Perazzi through and through, my heart wants to shoot a Zoli just because of the man.
Right, understood. You know, and I mean, it's another great choice. You know, it has a different history, you know, than what Perazzi has. But it's refreshing to talk to someone like Paulo because he has so much passion for it.
These guns are expensive, you know. It's a hobby. Nobody needs to shoot these guns, you know. It's a hobby. We do it because we like it. We buy it because we can. You know, it's the same thing with everything else in life. You know, women will buy bags, men will buy cars, and so on. And we buy guns because we can. But it's refreshing to see that, you know, these expensive guns, there's somebody behind it that is making the gun not for profit wise. It's just not expensive because of profit. It's expensive because he spends lots of money. We were there, he was telling us he bought some crazy machine to make the barrels shinier
better surface finish.
Which is already
right.
What percentage was 0.000 whatever it was, and it was millions of dollars just to make that.
Yeah, we asked Paulo, we said, is this going to improve the ballistic performance? And he said, we're going to find out. You know, but the titanium coating of the parts is just
the little extra, which you don't see the price increase on the gun. So that's why I love the guy so much. Is it's almost like he has a chip on his shoulder. Usually when you see the guys that take the companies from their fathers and they just want to do it better at all cost, it's almost like that. It came from his father, and how he has the company, and he has to do it better. And it is, I'm always fascinated for people that are in the pursuit of perfection, because you're never going to find it, but...
Well, one of the things that I've always liked, I mean, I love Paulo and his wife Elena. They're like family to me. I mean, they're really wonderful, wonderful people, and I've worked with them for many, many, many years. And I like their product. I really like their product a lot. One of the things about the Zoli product that I will say, because it's a small company and Paulo's so passionate about it, there's never any question about service. I mean, if you have a problem with the Zoli, I can pick up the phone and call Paulo and say, Paulo, this is what's going on, and he's going to do whatever is necessary to get it taken care of,
Yep.
And when you're spending, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 and up for a product, it's good to know that there's going to be good service behind that.
That they care.
Take care of that, and I think that's a big thing for us. Really we've built our business. Like I say, I was doing gunsmithing for 10 years before I sold my first gun. And I think that one of the things about our company is that our sales are driven by service first. And it's service is not shaking your hand, patting you on the back, and making you feel good. It is being certain that the product that we sell our consumer is going to work properly, and it's going to meet their needs.
Well, and that's a big thing, because first, when I started here, we come from sales. My family had a sales company, so sales is in my blood, and my entire family was in sales. We ran a company for years just selling products, and the sales mentality that I always thought was make more sales, make more money. And there was one thing that I before I was in sales here, when I was in the service department, a lot of things I saw is people come in because, oh, my buddy shoots a DT11, my buddy shoots a Parati, my buddy shoots a Blazer, and I just starting out and I need a gun. And in the beginning, it was very strange to me because it's a different mentality, but you're always telling people you're not ready for it. It's almost like the guy coming in and says, my buddy drives a Porsche, I want a GT3 RS or a GT2 RS. And the guy's like, you're not ready for that car. I want to drive an F1 and I just got my license yesterday. You're not ready for it. And it's not like a gun is going to shoot by itself, but we know that the person is not ready. And to me, it was like, how the hell do you keep a business running if you refuse to sell the expensive stuff and rather sell the cheaper stuff easier? But I noticed that that's what it is. It is this business, no one has one gun forever.
That's right. Yeah, we want them to learn it. We want them to learn the sport. I've always said, look, I'm not going to make any judgment based upon what an individual's economic status is, okay? But I know how hard I've worked for my money, and I appreciate that if I'm working with a salesperson about something, that they're going to be sensitive to meeting my needs with what my budget is. And what my experience has shown me is when an individual comes into this sport and they buy a gun, okay, they do something different after a year or two. They don't keep the same gun. Maybe they buy another one and keep it. Even if they're serious about it. So my point is that there are any number of really good guns that you can buy. If you spend a lot of money on an expensive gun on the front end, and 6 months from now, when you've learned a little bit more about the sport, you probably would have made a different choice on the gun that you were going to buy. But you've already spent so much of your...
No, you're stuck.
There it is. It's pretty easy to spend a couple $1,000s and buy a Rizzini BR110, a Beretta Silver Pigeon 1 or something like that, and use that for a few months and learn about Krieghoffs and Parazzis and Blazers and Kolars and Zolis and Beretta DT11s. Then you kind of have a sense of what that is going to be that you're going to like. You buy the more expensive gun, use it. Keep the Silver Pigeon 1 or the Rizzini BR110. You may need a backup gun someday. Your gun's got to be serviced. It's like an automobile, and you've got to periodically...
No, that's a good point. Let me ask a question, because this is very important. Do all guns break?
you use them enough, they're going to break. Show me a car that all you have to do is pour gas in it. It'll run forever. Show me.
Do guns need servicing? How come?
Yeah.
Aren't they supposed to last forever? I mean, Grandpa had a gun that he never serviced.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the rigors of clay target shooting today, whatever the discipline is, you look at the number of rounds that people shoot, you know, and interesting. So a gun is, let's say it's an 8.5 pound object for a 12 bore gun, okay? It's the only thing out there that every time you pull the switch on it, it tries to self-destruct. Because you pull the switch, it sets off a chain reaction that results in 10,000 pounds per square inch of pressure inside of this 8.5 pound object. And you want to do that tens of thousands of times.
And not have a problem.
Never have a problem, you know? I mean, look. You got to service them, you know, and you got to service them, and you know it's good to have a backup when you take it in to get it serviced. You want to make sure it's serviced by somebody that knows what's going on. You know, I mean, we encourage people, say, look, you know, we're going to be honest with people. You know, if a guy comes in and he says, I want to get my gun serviced, and we take a look at it and realize, you know, doesn't need anything, you know. We're going to spend a few minutes to show him what the points are of it, make sure he continues to lubricate it properly. But we're gonna leave it be. I mean, other times, you know, people bring the gun in, you know, they've got 8,000 or 10,000 rounds through a new gun. We're going to say, yep, let's just give it a basic service. Let's take it apart, let's clean it, lubricate it, inspect the parts, make sure that there isn't any premature wear or there isn't galling on the knuckle or something isn't going bad. Put it back together again, send them out the door, and you know, enjoy it. And after a certain period of time, you got to start changing some wear parts, just like you change brake pads on an automobile at a certain point.
In thing being here, I mean, we deal with high-end guns. You know, not only the ones we sell here, but the ones that pass through here.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
And have you ever seen the highest of end guns that couldn't break?
You use them. Eventually, they're going to break. They're all going to break.
So, I mean, and the reason I ask is because
let's not use. I don't want to use the word break.
But a pin, something will break at some point. A spring
still have some kind of problem. The ejectors will come out of time, or the gun will start to double fire. You won't get a second shot. I mean, you know, any number of different kinds of things that we see. Yes.
And you know, so the reason I ask these questions is because I think there's a misconception that I pay $10,000 for a gun. How come it has a problem? Well, it's a mechanical item.
Yeah, sure it is.
It's bound. No matter how expensive your gun is, at some point you will have a problem. It's just like your car. But the cars, we know, because now cars nowadays, you know, change oil every 3,000 miles. Right. Once it makes some weird sound, you take it in. Guns don't make sounds. Yeah. It either goes bang or it doesn't, and that's the thing. When it doesn't go bang, it could be a number of things.
That's right.
So you know, it's an important thing to know that, you know, you buy a brand new gun, it could have a problem or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, which is nice that we all love about it, is still hand assembled. Yeah. So it is still put together by hand. So it could be whatever it is. And these guns, most likely the parts can probably come from somewhere else, and it gets to the factory, or the factory makes the part, and then they have to assemble it, they have to polish it, they have to heat treat it. So it's a long process that, if you really stop to think about it, it is not like an automobile process, which is all machine made, easy, put on a computer, spits it out, put it all together. You're not hand filing parts in a car to fit perfectly. It's all spit out. This is the nice part about the guns that we appreciate, but still hand assembled. So it actually, if you stop to think about it, a gun that lasts, you know, 30,000 rounds from the moment you purchase it to the moment you shot 30,000 rounds, pretty a miracle that's working just fine after it has passed through that many hands.
Right. That's right. That's right. I mean, look, I'm surprised they work as well as they do.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, the reality is, and you know, and people oftentimes they say, why is a certain brand, like for example, why is a Perazzi so expensive? Why is a black frame Perazzi with no engraving and not fancy wood? Why is that gun $12,000, $14,000, $15,000?
They start at 16 now.
They start at 16 now. Yeah, inflation. But you know, part of that is that a big piece of that is the cost of the machinery that is needed to make those parts in relatively small quantities has to be amortized. Very similar to Krieghoff K80 is the same, the same thing. I mean, when you look at those guns are expensive. They're made in fairly small numbers. So they are more expensive. An interesting piece of it is, as far as shooters are concerned, we all are concerned about the amount of money we're going to spend on someone when we first write the check. Okay, in shooting, if you use the gun, the first check you write is the cheapest part of the whole.
The cheapest part of the sport is the gun.
If you think about what it costs to shoot 25,000 rounds of clay targets. Imagine what it costs to start going hunting, when you're going on paid hunts, I mean, let's face it, there isn't, people aren't shooting a whole lot of birds these days if they're not on paid hunts, unless they own a plantation or something like that. Our game, it's an expensive game.
Very expensive sport overall, hunts or clays. I mean, every time you squeeze that trigger, it's what, 70, 80 cents out the window?
Out the window, and that's just out of the gun. You still got to buy you got to pay a clay target. You got to buy birds. You drive there, you buy lunch. I always encourage people, don't buy junk guns. And it's not like, it doesn't have to be an expensive gun. It's not that. You just don't buy a junk gun, because there's a lot of stuff that's on the market that just is very, very poor quality.
And that's a conversation that I have here all the time, is that especially for detachable trigger guns, that's an important part. Do I buy a detachable trigger or I don't buy a detachable trigger? To me, I couldn't care less. I'm not a professional shooter, neither are you. We're not trying to be one. We like what we do, but they are going to break at some point, and to come to the sport is an expensive sport. Let's say today I'm going to go to Georgia and I'm coming from Texas to shoot a competition or whatever, the US Open. I'm paying flights, I'm paying hotel, car rental most likely if I didn't drive all the way there. Then I have food, I have paid to shoot. I mean, a few thousand right there just to fly over and press the trigger 100 times.
Just to get started.
So people ask me, and that's why a question for you: should or should you not have a detachable trigger gun? And that I know that you shoot a fixed trigger gun.
I'm not traveling to those shoots and spending the money like you're talking about. I'm an old man with bad eyesight and slow reflexes. Hey, look, I like detachable trigger guns, okay, and I like them better when the shooter has a spare trigger.
Okay.
90% of the time in these guns, if something happens that's going to shut that gun down in the middle of a shoot, it's going to be in the trigger assembly. Okay, so that means 90% of the time, if they've gone halfway across the country, they're at a competitive shoot, they're there having a good time, and for some reason they've got a problem with their gun. 90% of the time, if they take the trigger assembly out and put a spare one in, they're back going. And they're not seeking a gunsmith out. They're not coming into somebody's trailer or going to the manufacturer saying, oh my God, I've shooting 15 minutes and my gun isn't working.
So would you say that a $900 investment on a $10,000 gun would be smart?
I mean, at the DT11 triggers,
$950, I think it is.
Yep. $1,000 with, I mean, a Parazzi's more expensive than that if it's a selector. I mean, it can be as much as a couple grand.
$2,400.
Yeah, with a selector. Yeah. I mean, it's cheap money when you look at the insurance factor and just the value of the whole product. It's a matter of having the whole thing. That's not saying, I mean, somebody could say to me, well, what are you talking about? The gun isn't well enough made that my trigger's not going to break? No, we're not saying that at all. We're going to go back and say, it's a mechanical object.
Made by somebody.
Made by somebody. Murphy's Law says that anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And with my experience, it always goes wrong at the worst possible time.